The sun rose over the jagged mountains of Zetra Prime, casting long shadows across the sprawling city. In the center, the massive arena towered like a monument to power and fear. Its walls gleamed with alien metal that shimmered under the morning light, a reminder that no human could ever match the might of the Zetrians. Yet within those walls, humans were forced to fight for survival, for glory, and for the amusement of alien spectators who saw them as nothing more than toys. Kale walked through the gates, his bare feet crunching on the cold metal floor. He wore only the standard slave tunic, a simple gray cloth that marked him as property of the Zetrian Empire. Around him, other slaves moved in silence, their faces a mix of fear and resignation. None spoke unless commanded. The arena guards, tall and sharp-eyed, followed them closely, their long spears reflecting the sunlight. Kale's heart pounded in his chest, not from fear alone, but from the fire that had begun to burn within him. Each day in the arena was a reminder of his status, a reminder that he was just a slave. Yet deep inside, he refused to accept it. He had seen stories from older humans, tales of heroes who rose from nothing and changed the course of history. He had listened to whispers in the tunnels, to the quiet murmurs of hope that no Zetrian could hear. And now, as he stepped onto the cold, metallic ground of the arena, that hope felt closer than ever. From the stands above, the crowd erupted in cheers and alien cries. Their voices were loud, deafening, yet for Kyle they were a strange kind of music. The audience had come to see entertainment, blood, sweat, and skill, but Kale was determined to make them see something different. He would not just fight for survival. He would fight for respect. He would fight for pride. And standing at the far end of the arena, on a platform of polished crystal, was Lady Seraphine, the undefeated champion of the Zetrian Empire. She was everything the humans were not, tall, elegant, fierce, and undefeated. Her armor shone like silver under the bright light, and her eyes, sharp and piercing, scanned the arena as though searching for the weak. She spotted Kale immediately, and a smirk played on her lips. "You're just a slave," she sneered, her voice carrying across the arena. "What makes you think you can even stand here with me?" The words stung, but Kale did not respond immediately. Instead, he lowered his head slightly, feeling the weight of her gaze. Around him, other humans shuffled nervously. Some averted their eyes, too used to humiliation to even care, but Kale's hands clenched into fists. He said quietly, almost to himself, his voice carrying a calm strength. "I was a slave, but that was then." The crowd fell silent for a brief moment, unsure what he meant. The Zetrians chuckled softly, amused by what they thought was a feeble attempt at bravado. Seraphine raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued by the human's defiance. Kyle stepped forward, feeling the uneven metal beneath his feet. His eyes locked on hers, and in that moment the arena seemed to shrink. Every muscle in his body tightened, ready for the challenge. He had trained in secret, learned the movements and strategies that might allow a human to survive against a Zetrian champion. But more than that, he carried something no armor or weapon could give him: human determination. The gates opened, and a series of mechanical drones released smaller combatants into the arena. Kale had faced them before, machines built to test and torment slaves. They were fast, strong, and relentless. But today, Kale moved differently. His steps were measured, precise. His eyes scanned, calculating, predicting. One drone lunged at him, its claws snapping like lightning. Kale dodged smoothly, feeling the air whistle past his face. He struck back with a piece of scrap metal he had grabbed earlier, sending sparks flying. The crowd gasped. It was unusual for a human to show skill, and even more unusual to show courage. Kale moved like he had trained for years, weaving through attacks with a combination of speed and intelligence. Every strike, every dodge, every movement told a story. Humans were not weak. Humans were not inferior. And then Seraphine stepped down from her platform. She was no longer the distant observer, but the opponent. Her movements were fluid, almost hypnotic. She attacked with speed and precision, testing Kale's reactions. He stumbled once, narrowly avoiding her strike, but he did not fall. Each block, each step, each counter-move he made was driven by years of suppressed anger and the silent promise that he would rise above his fate. "You have spirit," Seraphine said, her voice sharp but not unkind. "I will enjoy breaking it." Kale felt a thrill, a spark of something he had not felt in years. He did not answer, for he did not need to. His focus was complete. Every swing, every dodge, every movement was calculated. Slowly, the tide of the battle shifted. The humans watching from the sidelines gasped in disbelief. The drones fell one by one. The champion herself, the mighty Seraphine, seemed to hesitate at times, as though uncertain how to deal with this human who moved with a mix of instinct and cunning. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. Sweat ran down Kale's face, his muscles ached, but he did not yield. Finally, he saw an opening. A small moment where Seraphine's strike had left her slightly off balance. He acted on instinct, moving with precision and skill that startled the crowd. The tip of his weapon touched her armor lightly, not to kill but to prove a point. The arena went silent. Seraphine's eyes widened slightly, then she laughed softly, not mockingly but with respect. "You fight well," she said. "Perhaps you are more than a slave." Kyle lowered his weapon, breathing heavily, his chest rising and falling with effort. He did not answer, for the words were unnecessary. He had made his point. Humans were capable of more than the Zitrians believed. The seed of defiance had been planted, not just in the arena but in the hearts of every human who watched. Later, when Kale returned to the slave quarters, he moved quietly among his fellow humans. Some stared at him with awe, others with hope. No words were needed. The battle had spoken for him. For the first time, they felt that maybe the impossible could be achieved. Maybe humans could rise above the chains of slavery. Kale sat in the corner, cleaning his simple metal weapon, and thought about what lay ahead. The arena was only the beginning. The Zitrians were strong and their control was absolute. But he had learned something essential today. Fear could be conquered, and even the smallest spark could ignite a fire. As night fell over Zitra Prime, Kyle looked out toward the distant stars. Somewhere out there, humans had survived for centuries, scattered across planets, waiting for a moment to reclaim their place in the universe. Kyle smiled faintly. He had no doubts. That moment would come, and he would be ready, for now he would endure. He would train. He would learn. But one day the chains of slavery would fall, and when they did, Kyle would not just survive, he would lead. And in the shadows of the sleeping city, the whisper of hope began to spread. A human had stood tall even when called just a slave, and that was enough to start a revolution. The day after Kale's unexpected display in the arena, the slave quarters were unusually quiet. Humans moved about their daily routines, but something had shifted. Whispers filled the air, whispers of courage, defiance, and possibility. Kale walked through the narrow corridors, noticing how people glanced at him with new hope in their eyes. For years, the Zitrians had crushed the human spirit, but now, just one human stand in the arena had sparked something they thought long dead. Kale knew, however, that a single battle was only the beginning. The Zitrians were powerful and relentless. Their control over the colonies was absolute, and any hint of rebellion would be crushed instantly. But he also knew that fear alone could not hold humans forever. Courage, strategy, and determination, these were stronger than chains. That evening, Kale made his way to the hidden tunnels beneath the arena. Few humans knew of them. They were remnants of old human settlements long buried by Zitrian construction. In the shadows, he found his friends: Lyra, a quick-thinking engineer, and Torin, a strong but gentle giant who had protected the weaker slaves for years. Both had heard the news of Kale's fight. "You did it," Lyra whispered, her eyes wide. "I never thought I'd see a human fight like that." "Not just fight, stand like that," Kale shook his head. "I didn't do anything special. I just refused to be afraid. That's all. Fear is what makes us weak. If we can learn to ignore it, we can survive. Even against them." Torin nodded slowly. "And maybe more than survive. Maybe we can fight back." Kale's eyes lit up. "Yes, that's exactly it. Not just survive, but fight. And we can start small. Teach humans to move, to think, to resist in ways the Zitrians don't expect. They think we are weak. They think we will always obey. They are wrong." The three of them moved deeper into the tunnels, past old storage rooms and broken machinery, until they reached a hidden chamber. Dust covered the floor and the air smelled faintly of metal and age. In the corner lay something strange, a suit of armor long forgotten. Its design was human, unlike the sleek alien metal of the Zitrians. It was battered but clearly built for a warrior. Kale approached it slowly. "Where did this come from?" he asked. Lyra ran her fingers over the etched patterns. "This is ancient. Legends say it belonged to a human warrior who once fought against invaders centuries ago. They say no one could match him in battle, that he defended humans when they were scattered and weak. If the stories are true, this armor is a symbol. Kyle reached out and touched the cold metal. A strange feeling ran through him, as if the armor itself was speaking to him, calling him to action. He imagined wearing it in the arena, not just as a weapon but as a statement. Humans could rise. Humans could fight back. Humans could win. He turned to Lyra and Torin. I will wear it. I will train. And when the time comes, I will face them again, not just to survive, but to show everyone what humans are capable of. Torin placed a hand on his shoulder. Then we will help you. We will train with you, teach others, and prepare for whatever comes. You will not be alone. Night fell over Zitra Prime, and the city above remained unaware of the small rebellion forming beneath their feet. Kale trained tirelessly in the chamber. Each day he practiced strikes, blocks, and maneuvers, learning to move in the heavy armor as if it were a part of him. He discovered strengths he had never known, muscles he had never used. The armor seemed to guide him, as if it remembered the hands of the warrior who had worn it long ago. Lyra worked alongside him, creating makeshift training devices from scrap metal. She rigged dummies to move unpredictably, teaching Kale to anticipate attacks like the Zitrians would use. Torin acted as both sparring partner and protector, pushing Kale beyond what he thought was possible. As days turned into weeks, Kale's skill grew. He learned not just to fight, but to think strategically. He observed patterns in the Zitrian guards, noting how they relied on brute force and confidence. The humans, he realized, could not match them in strength, but they could outsmart them. Every movement, every trap, every plan could tilt the balance in their favor. One evening, as Kale rested in the dimly lit chamber, he heard a soft voice at the entrance. Lyra had brought news. Kyle, she whispered, I overheard the Zitrian overseers talking. They are concerned about you. Your fight in the arena, it has caused unrest. Humans are looking at you differently. They are talking about hope. Kale's eyes narrowed. Good, let them worry. But we cannot rely on fear or intimidation. We need more. We need training, planning, and patience. We strike when we are ready, and when we do. It must be perfect, Lyra nodded. I understand, but Kale, the humans are scared. Some are too afraid to even try. How do you inspire them? Kale smiled faintly. By showing them it is possible. By standing up even when the odds are against us. That is how humans have survived all these years. Not because we were strong, not because we were fast, but because we never gave up, Torin added. And soon, they will see that not even the Zitrians can stop us if we are united. The following days were a blur of preparation. Kale trained in the armor until every movement became second nature. He practiced with Lyra's devices, countered Torin's strikes, and envisioned himself in the arena again, facing Seraphine and the drones, but this time with the full strength of the armor and his growing skill. Meanwhile, rumors of Kale's abilities spread quietly through the human quarters. Stories of his courage reached those too fearful to leave their cells, and even some Zitrians whispered among themselves, curious about the human who had surprised the champion. One night, as Kale rested in the chamber, he felt a strange sense of calm. He realized that fear, once his constant companion, was now a tool he could control. He could feel it in others, sense their hesitation, and use it to his advantage. More importantly, he understood that humans had an unquantifiable strength, the will to survive, the will to fight, the will to rise. That strength, he knew, could never be measured by muscle or metal. Then came the day Kale decided it was time to test himself beyond the tunnels. He ventured into the arena, not as a fighter for the Zitrians, but as a human determined to learn, to observe, and to plan. Hidden among the shadows, he watched as Seraphine trained, her movements precise and fluid, her strikes deadly. He noticed patterns, weaknesses, and moments where a clever human could exploit her confidence. As he watched, Kale felt the spark of a larger plan forming in his mind. Humans could not challenge the Zitrians head-on, at least not yet. But with intelligence, training, and courage, they could show the world that strength was not the only measure of power. By the time Kale returned to the tunnels, his resolve had hardened. He would continue to train. He would teach others. And one day he would face Seraphine again, not just to prove his skill, but to prove something greater, that humans, Even when enslaved and oppressed, could rise, could endure, and could achieve the impossible. That night, the chamber was quiet, but the feeling in the air had changed. Hope had taken root. The spark of rebellion had been lit. And as Kale lay on the cold floor, resting from his day's training, he knew one thing for certain. The era of human weakness was over. A new chapter was beginning, and he would be at the center of it. Outside, the stars shone brightly over Zitra Prime, distant and untouchable, yet somehow within reach. Kyle looked at them and whispered to himself, "One day, we will rise." The fire within him burned stronger than ever. He was no longer just a slave. He was the spark, and from that spark a flame of rebellion would grow. The grand arena of Zitra Prime was filled with a roar unlike anything Kale had ever heard. Thousands of spectators, humans and aliens alike, gathered in the towering stands, their voices mixing into a deafening symphony. At the center, the fighting ground gleamed under the artificial lights, a perfect stage for a battle that would decide not just victory, but the very meaning of human pride. Kyle stood in the shadows, hidden from view, his heart pounding in rhythm with the drumbeat of the crowd. He had spent weeks training in secret, learning every move, every strategy that might allow him to survive. And now he was ready, not as a slave, not as a weak human, but as something more. Wearing the legendary armor, he felt its weight and its power, not as a burden, but as a symbol. Each plate, each joint, each etched line was a reminder that humans had once defended themselves against impossible odds, and could do so again. From across the arena, the crowd's attention shifted. Lady Seraphine appeared, descending from her platform with her usual grace and confidence. Her armor shone like silver fire, her movements precise and deadly. She had faced countless opponents, but there was a ripple of curiosity in her eyes as she glanced around the arena. The audience had been waiting for Kale, and when he stepped into the light, the silence that fell over the arena was almost tangible. The human in shining armor moved with a quiet determination. His face, partially hidden by the helmet, was calm but focused. When he spoke, his voice carried over the arena, steady and resolute. "I am no longer a slave," Kale said. "I am human, and I am here to fight, not just for myself, but for everyone who has been told they are weak." The Zetrians murmured in disbelief. The humans in the crowd whispered excitedly, their hope swelling. Seraphine tilted her head slightly, intrigued. For the first time, perhaps, she saw not an ordinary human, but a challenger worthy of respect. Without another word, the duel began. Seraphine lunged forward, her movements fluid and precise. Kale met her strikes with careful timing, parrying, dodging, and countering. Every motion was deliberate, every step calculated. The arena floor shook under the force of their combat, sparks flying where metal met metal. The crowd watched in awe. Humans were not supposed to fight like this. They were not supposed to survive against a Zytrian champion. Yet here was Kale, moving with intelligence, skill, and courage that none could deny. Each strike he avoided, each counter he made, demonstrated that strength alone did not determine victory. Seraphine attacked with a series of fast, precise strikes, testing Kale's reactions. But Kale had studied every possible move, practiced for countless hours, and trusted in his instincts. He blocked one strike, sidestepped another, and finally feinted, making Seraphine overcommit to an attack. He landed a light touch on her armor, a deliberate, controlled strike. The crowd gasped. Seraphine paused, momentarily surprised. She did not laugh, she did not scoff. Instead, she regarded him with a spark of respect. "You have skill," she said, her voice cutting through the arena's noise. "Perhaps you are more than I imagined." Kyle did not reply. His focus remained unbroken. Every move now mattered more than words. He remembered the lessons of the tunnels. Humans could not match Zytrians in raw strength, but they could outthink them, adapt to their patterns, and use strategy to turn the tide. The fight intensified. Seraphine's strikes were fast and powerful, yet Kale's movements were sharper, more precise. He used the armor's strength to his advantage, absorbing blows that would have shattered a weaker human. He observed her carefully, noting the slightest hesitation in her stance, the subtle patterns of her attacks. He learned with each strike, adapting, predicting, surviving. Around them, the crowd's excitement grew. Humans cheered, inspired by Kale's skill and courage. Some Zytrians whispered among themselves, beginning to question their assumptions about human weakness. Kale could feel the energy of the audience pushing him forward, a strange but powerful connection to every human who dared to hope. Then came a critical moment. Seraphine launched a powerful spinning attack faster than anything Kale had faced. He dodged at the last second, rolling across the arena floor. Sparks flew where her blade had missed, and the crowd gasped in unison. Kale rose to his feet, his breathing steady, his mind sharp. He could see her opening now, the moment he had been waiting for. With a sudden burst of speed, Kale countered. His strike was precise, not to harm, but to demonstrate skill. It landed on Seraphine's armor with a sharp clang that echoed through the arena. She stumbled slightly, a rare mistake, and Kale knew the moment was his. He did not strike again. Instead, he stepped back, raising his weapon in a gesture of respect. The crowd fell silent, unsure what would happen next. Seraphine stared at him, and for the first time she smiled, not mockingly but genuinely impressed. "You are human," she said, her tone calm. "And you fight with honor." Kale lowered his weapon, breathing heavily but steadily. "I fight as a human," he replied. "And humans do not give up. We endure, we survive, we rise." The arena erupted in cheers, not just for Kale, but for what he represented. Humans were not weak. Humans were not mere slaves. They were capable of courage, skill, and honor beyond what the Zitrians had imagined. Seraphine nodded slowly, stepping back. "You have earned my respect," she said. "Perhaps one day I will learn from you as well." Kyle did not respond immediately. His focus remained sharp, his mind racing with the possibilities of the future. This fight was only the beginning. He had shown that humans could rise, that courage and intelligence could match brute strength. But there was more to be done. More humans needed to see, to learn, to believe. As he left the arena, the crowd still cheering, Kale felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He was no longer just fighting for survival. He was fighting for inspiration, for hope, and for the idea that humans, even when oppressed, could achieve the impossible. Back in the tunnels, Kale recounted the fight to Lyra and Torin. They listened intently, absorbing every detail. "You did it," Torin said, his voice filled with pride. "You showed them what humans are capable of." Lyra nodded, her eyes shining. "Yes, and now we have to teach others. We have to train them, prepare them, so that when the time comes, humans will stand together, not as slaves, but as equals." Kyle agreed. "This is only the start. The Zitrians may be powerful, but they are not invincible. Humans have something they will never understand: determination, ingenuity, and the will to rise. That is our strength." In the weeks that followed, Kyle trained more humans, sharing techniques he had learned and creating strategies for survival and combat. The tunnels became a hidden school of hope, where humans learned to move, fight, and think like warriors. Each human who trained with him gained confidence, skill, and the realization that they were more than slaves. Meanwhile, the Zitrians watched, unaware that their control was beginning to crumble, not through force, but through the quiet awakening of human courage. Kale's fight had sparked something far greater than any one battle. It had lit a flame in the hearts of humans, a flame that could not be extinguished. And as Kale donned the legendary armor each day, he felt its power not as a weapon but as a symbol of human resilience, intelligence, and honor. He was no longer just a fighter in an arena. He was a leader in the making, a spark for rebellion, and a reminder to all humans that even in the darkest chains, the human spirit could shine brighter than any star. Above the arena, the stars of Zitra Prime shone like distant promises. Kale looked at them and whispered to himself, "We are not weak. We will rise. And one day every human will see what we are capable of." The battle had been won, but the war for human dignity and freedom was just beginning, and Kale was ready for it, armored not just in metal but in courage, strategy, and hope. The arena of Zitra Prime had never seen such a day. Word of Kale's victory over Lady Seraphine had spread like wildfire across the colonies. Humans whispered his name in secret corners, inspired by the human who had dared to stand against the mightiest Zitrian champion and survive. For the first time in generations, hope was alive. And hope, Kale knew, was stronger than any weapon. Kale stood in the tunnels beneath the arena, his armor polished and gleaming under the dim lights. Around him, dozens of humans trained, learning the techniques he had developed, preparing their minds and bodies for a future where they would no longer be slaves. Lyra adjusted one of the training dummies while Torin demonstrated proper blocking techniques. Each human moved with focus, determination, and pride. Kyle watched them, a quiet smile on his face. The arena had been a start, a spark, but this movement growing in the shadows was a fire. Humans were beginning to understand their own power, not just as fighters, but as thinkers, planners, and survivors. They were learning that strength alone was not enough, and that unity could turn the tide. Suddenly, a small alarm sounded in the tunnel. It was a soft beep, almost easy to miss. Lyra's eyes widened. "They've discovered something," she whispered. "The Zetrians. They're onto us." Kale nodded calmly. "Then we prepare. They may be stronger, but we are smarter, and smarter always wins in the end." The next day, the arena was packed with spectators once again. Zetrians looked around nervously, their confidence shaken by the memory of Kale's previous victory. Even Lady Seraphine stood among them, her usual pride tempered by respect for the human who had bested her. She met Kale's gaze across the arena, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. They were opponents, yes, but also something more. Warriors recognizing strength in one another. Kale stepped into the arena, every movement deliberate, every gesture carrying weight. The legendary armor shone under the lights not just as protection but as a symbol. Every human who saw him felt their chest swell with pride. He carried no weapon at first. Instead, he raised his arms to the sky, showing that courage and skill were his true tools. The Zetrians were quick to react. Drones and soldiers flooded the arena, ready to demonstrate their superiority. Yet Kale moved with precision, his training in the tunnels guiding every step. He dodged mechanical claws, anticipated strikes, and used the arena's environment to his advantage. One by one, he disarmed the drones, not to destroy them, but to show the spectators that the so-called unbeatable force of the Zetrians could be outmatched by intelligence and courage. Seraphine stepped forward. "You have grown stronger," she said. "But strength alone cannot save you." Kyle smiled faintly beneath his helmet. "I do not rely on strength alone. I rely on humans, our minds, our unity, and our will." The two circled each other, the energy between them palpable. Their clash began slowly, with testing strikes, careful movements, and measured reactions. But soon the battle escalated. Seraphine attacked with precision and force, yet Kale's counters were smart, adaptive, and fluid. Every dodge, every step, every parry was a lesson in human ingenuity. Around the arena, the crowd erupted in cheers and gasps. Humans were rising in spirit, and even some Zetrians began to murmur, seeing for the first time that humans were not to be underestimated. Kale's movements were more than combat. They were a statement. Then Kale saw the opening he had been waiting for. Seraphine overextended in a strike, her confidence momentarily tipping the balance. Kale acted with speed, precision, and honor. He struck, not to harm but to demonstrate skill, showing that humans could fight with intelligence and restraint. His weapon touched her armor lightly, yet the impact was symbolic. The crowd fell silent, sensing the significance of the moment. Seraphine stopped. She stepped back and lowered her weapon, her eyes reflecting something Kale had not expected, respect and perhaps even admiration. "You have done more than fight," she said. "You have shown what humans are capable of. Perhaps it is time for change." Kale nodded. "Change has already begun," he replied. "Humans are not slaves. We are thinkers, warriors, and survivors, and we will not be forgotten." The arena erupted into a roar. Humans cheered, voices united for the first time in generations. Zetrians looked around, unsure of how to respond. Kale's victory was not just a personal triumph. It was a symbol of human resilience and potential. After the battle, Kale returned to the tunnels, where Lyra, Tauren, and the others awaited him. Their faces shone with excitement, pride, and hope. They had witnessed something extraordinary. The humans who had trained in secret now understood that their efforts were not in vain. Tauren clapped Kyle on the shoulder. "You've done it. You've given us more than victory. You've given us belief." Lyra nodded, her eyes bright. "The others will see it too. Humans across Zetra Prime will know that we are capable of more than chains and labor. We can rise." Kyle looked around at the group, at the faces of humans who had once been afraid, broken, or resigned. Each one now held something stronger than fear. They had learned courage, patience, strategy, and teamwork. They had seen what one human armed with determination and the spirit of their ancestors could accomplish. "This is only the beginning," Kale said quietly, but firmly. "The Zetrians may still be strong, but they are not invincible. Humans have something they cannot take away: our will, our mind, and our unity. We will train, prepare, and rise together. One day, every human colony will remember that we are more than slaves. We are humans, And humans endure. Days passed, and the spark Kale had ignited in the arena spread throughout the colonies. Humans began to organize quietly at first, learning from Kale's strategies and teachings. They trained in secret, using techniques and ideas that the Zitrians could not predict. Even those who had been too afraid to fight before now took heart, inspired by the courage of one human who dared to defy the odds. The Zitrians noticed the change. They saw humans moving differently, speaking more boldly and organizing quietly. They did not yet understand the magnitude of the shift, but Kale and the humans did. They knew the time for rebellion was coming, and when it arrived, they would be ready. Kale stood one night at the edge of the city, looking up at the stars. The distant suns glimmered like tiny beacons of hope, reminding him that humanity had survived for centuries, scattered across planets, enduring hardships no alien could imagine. And now, humanity had a chance to reclaim not just dignity, but freedom. He put a hand on the legendary armor, feeling its weight and its power. "This armor," he whispered, "is more than metal. It is a symbol of what humans can achieve. One day we will rise fully. One day humans will not just survive, they will lead, they will inspire, and they will endure." Lyra and Torin joined him silently, standing as witnesses to the quiet promise of the future. Together they imagined the day when the Zitrians would no longer look down upon humans as slaves, when humans would stand tall, proud, and free. And in that moment, beneath the stars and the shadows of Zitra Prime, Kale understood something profound. The human spirit could never be broken. It could be tested, challenged, and oppressed, but it could never be destroyed. With courage, intelligence, and unity, humans could overcome any obstacle, defeat any opponent, and rise from the deepest despair to greatness. Kale smiled beneath his helmet. He had fought battles, survived challenges, and inspired hope, but the greatest fight was still ahead. And when the time came, humans would be ready. The legend of Kale, the human who had dared to stand, fight, and rise, would spread far and wide, and every human looking up at the stars would remember that they were not slaves. They were humans. And humans endure. The spark had become a flame, and from that flame a new era of human courage, resilience, and freedom was born. Kale had started it all, and now the future was in human hands.